Hello and welcome to the Video Gamer UK Zelda podcast special. We bloody love Zelda.
Really do.
People say that we don't like Nintendo things, but those people don't listen to things that come out of our mouths.
Yeah.
We bloody love Zelda. Anyway, long and short of it, there is a brand new Zelda game coming out.
Brand new.
It's on the 3DS. It looked great initially, and then we heard more about it, and everybody, including myself, went, oh God, it sounds crap. But now, thankfully, we can tell you the embargo is lifted, and we can tell you that Zelda A Link Between Worlds
that's the one.
on the 3DS is fucking fantastic.
Isn't
Absolutely
anyone else having
brilliant.
problems remembering
Yes.
the name of that game?
Yes,
I
it's
keep
good.
forgetting.
It's because the actual full title is A Legend of Zelda, A Link Between Worlds. I mean, it's a bit of a bit of a mouthful.
bit of
So
a
The
mouthful,
Legends of
love.
Zelda, but
Anyway, as we've said on earlier podcasts, all I know about this game is that you said it had a weird kind of item system in the way that works.
it does.
And also I know, because I've heard you playing it, that the music in it is so exciting that it makes me want to take my nostalgia trousers off and jump into the sea.
Yep, that's the right thing to
And
do as well.
I am really excited to know more about this because I've avoided asking you too much about it because I wanted to have it on a podcast.
Exactly.
So this podcast
agree.
is a Zelda special. We're going to start off just talking about why this game is awesome and no spoilers, obviously.
No spoilers in this at all.
But after that, we're going to then talk about Zelda games generally. It's going to be a Zelda big podcast.
Yeah.
And at that point, I can't promise that there won't necessarily be spoilers.
Yeah, for the
So-
past games, there'll probably be some spoilers.
Yeah, so if you haven't completed every Zelda game ever,
Come back later.
then come back later.
For the
Yeah,
purpose of the
obviously-
audio, I'm raising my
obviously
hand
Brad.
up here.
I'm going to say we're probably not going to spoil too much about Ocarina of Time because of the fact that Brad's still
Yeah,
playing it and I'm enjoying that
unbelievable.
process.
I've just got to a big moment, so yeah.
Yeah,
We'll talk about it in
that.
general terms, though.
Anyway, cracking on. So why is it? What? Tell us.
Well, I mean, if you'd like to, if you want to read while you listen to the podcast, if you're able to do that with your eyes and your ears, we have given it a 10. Well, I have given it a 10 out of 10.
A 10 out of 10.
I don't want to put,
Yikes.
my crazy scores on anybody else's shoulders. But I mean, I stand by
Well,
it.
I don't know. I
100
mean,
million percent. Because
Since you've been working with me, you've only given one game a 10, and I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
So that was The Last of Us. So yeah, your
I
reviews.
gave GTA 5 a 10 as well.
Oh, yeah. No,
I'm just a
actually,
10 guy. I just throw them out. But I'd like to point out before this, I've only ever given 2 other games a 10. It's just been a great year.
that's pretty good.
It's been a great
I've
year.
probably given about 5 games 10s. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's apparently awesome.
Well, it's just, I mean, it's the way the whole thing builds. Like, when you start off, it deliberately places yourself in, it is a link to the past. Not sort of verbatim, but, you're in that world. It's reintroducing things to you. It's doing that amazing thing where if you've never played A Link to the Past, it's letting you know, not too subtly, but subtly enough. Whereas if you have playing it, it's just giving you nods and winks and nudges. So you're like, oh, I feel like I'm part of the special Zelda club. That it's just me. When obviously there's like 10 other million people going, oh, me too. And that's just wonderful. And that's when you it starts because obviously if you've played A Link to the Past, it's nighttime, it's raining, and it just goes.
Yeah.
Your uncle goes, I've got to go, something terrible's happened. You're like, oh my gosh. It's a very dark, very threatening beginning, really.
It is, yeah.
For what is essentially supposed to be a kids' game, even though they're not kids' games at all. This one is the opposite to that. This builds a little more, and it does it on purpose to make sure, terrible word, but I'm going to use it, so it's juxtaposed to the Link to the Past beginning. But then everything it does from then, and let's not forget the Link to the Past came out in 1991, so we're talking, 23 years. That's a long time.
Shit, yeah.
Everything it does with the mindset that this is a sequel to A Link to the Past, what many people consider to be the best Zelda game. And it keeps that in mind the entire time. So what it's done is, Nintendo have taken a step back and they've looked at it and gone, why does everyone love that so much? We'll take those bits, but what do we have to do to ensure that it's relevant in 2013, that it's new, that people don't feel like they're playing an update? And it does it balances it genuinely, for me, perfectly. I don't see how they could have done it any better than they have. And the way the adventure builds, I mean, it should come as no surprise to no one that you collect 3 emeralds or gems or whatever it is this time.
Magical items.
And then you think, oh, I've done the game.
Then
No,
there's
you
seven-
haven't.
seven
And then
more
there's
dungeons?
7 more. Now, so it follows the Zelda template, but it does that in a strange way because there are lots of nods to other Zelda games in A Link Between Worlds. And they're done so well. I said this in my review. I genuinely thought my heart would just burst out of my chest and run down the road, and I'd have to chase it and go, "Heart, come back, please," because they're just so well done. Like, if you don't know what they're saying, you'll just see it as like, "Oh, lovely." I've ruined Brad. They'll just see it. But if this is the first Zelda game you've played, or your history is any good, you'll just see them as, "Oh, that's nice. They're telling me what's happened in other Zelda games." But if you have played other Zelda games, it's just like they're deliberately playing with my nostalgia, what I love about Zelda, and they're deliberately pushing it in my face. There's one thing, I mean, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but just to make my point, Ravio, who's the guy that rents items, who we'll get to in due course, he takes over Link's house, And there is something in Link's
Oh
house.
God, it sounds like some of your loans have gone a bit bad.
Oh yeah, exactly. I'll give him my house.
Give him your house.
But there is something in Link's house. I'm not going to tell you what it is because it'd be unfair. Because when I put 2 and 2 together, again, heart runs down the road, and it's just brilliant. And it's so well done. If you've never played a Zelda game, you just probably laugh and think, "Oh, that's cute." But if you know Zelda, you want to cheer, and you just want to go. It's so clever, Nintendo. It's so insignificant. I could go through the whole game and never see that, and it would make no difference. But the fact that it's there, and the fact that it is playing on hopes and expectations people have for the Zelda games in general, it's in one. It does that constantly. It doesn't throw these things in your face. It lets you find them, and every time you do, you just think, how have you done this, Anuma and friends? You're so clever.
That's
You're
amazing.
so lovely.
I honestly believe that as well, because it sounds like a weird thing, but the music, just hearing the music, it blew me away. Because a lot of the time, it doesn't sound like... If I would say to you, like, oh, yeah, it's a Zelda game, but they've recorded loads of new music and also, like, lots of classic Zelda music.
Which is what they've done, yeah.
Which is what they've done. With an orchestra,
yeah.
an orchestral soundtrack. That's the sort of thing now where every game does that, right? Like, every game. I remember a few years ago, you'd be like, oh, yeah, it's got an orchestral soundtrack. And you'd be like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Whereas now, it's just like, yeah, even shit games have orchestras doing
It's
stuff.
true, they do, yeah.
But just listening to it, even though, and I can't wait to get some headphones on, some proper headphones.
Honestly, I started off playing this game using the Nintendo 3DS speakers. After 2 hours, I went, what the hell am I doing?
That's the thing
and I got my inf and I plugged them in.
I heard it just from the speakers, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
But I cannot wait to put my best headphones in.
It's rare to talk about music in a game. We should talk about it more in general because it can change an experience entirely.
Totally.
And this game's good already, but the music is what I've said this in the feature that accompanies the review. That's what takes it into this whole other plane. Because whether it's the new stuff that most of the dungeons, apart from when you go underground, you have the classic Zelda sort of below ground noise. Most of the dungeons have their own themes, and they're all instantly in your head. Do you know what I mean? They suit the environment. As soon as you go in and you hear the whatever tune they've got for 10 seconds, you just think it's perfect.
Yeah.
And the way it's done, it's not MIDI themed, it's not sort of bitty. It's a full orchestra with backing, and it just makes you get 10 times more immersed in the game than you would already. And it's a small thing. I mean, it's not really a spoiler. I mean, no, it's not a spoiler at all. I mean, it's something I enjoyed noticing. The overworld theme changes about 3 or 4 times. It's always a Zelda theme, so dun, 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 dun. It's always that, but it's different variations. And if something happens in the story that's bad, it becomes a bit more frenetic, a bit faster. If you've kind of just done something, it slows down a bit. I think it probably changes 4 or 5 times, but you notice it and you just think, oh, it's so good. And like sometimes they'll add in instruments to give you more of a flavour. So you always feel like you're progressing. You always feel like you're part of an adventure. And it just grows and grows. It never stops growing, ever.
I've got to say, like, I'm big into music, but at the same time, like, just to give you some context, like, whenever you have these big live shows where it's like, hey, video game music at the Albert Hall or whatever, I don't really buy into that stuff. I mean, it's nice, but it's like I don't get excited by that. Right?
No, I need to be...
When it's like, sure, whatever. Like, well done, you've done a Final Fantasy theme with an orchestra. That's very nice.
Yeah.
But the thing is, because I often find that those things, I've seen them. I went to Video Games Live once, and it kind of felt like it lacked a bit of soul. It felt like a very professional orchestra playing a tune effectively.
Yeah, I agree. I know what you mean.
Just listening to the way that these tracks have been done from the other side of the room on shitty tinny speakers, these have, this is the way they've been like conducted. You can tell that this is actually like the orchestra who've done it have taken it seriously.
I totally agree.
And
it's
the
played with
conductor
passion.
have really nailed it. Like they haven't just gone, here's the music, play it.
No, it's like,
and then they've gone, yeah, that's fine. They've gone,
Link's
no,
just defeated this boss.
Yeah, it needs to be this. Like they've actually kind of, and even though it is a kind of basically, it's not 2D, but it's a 2D style game, top down. They have looked at stuff like atmosphere with real importance.
Definitely, and I think, I mean, bringing something else into the equation just briefly, I think it must be on Nintendo's agenda this year because Mario 3D Land World 279, whatever it's called, does exactly the same. It wouldn't surprise me. It's the same orchestra. Their focus on music this year, everyone remembers classic Nintendo tunes. They're geniuses at doing it, but the emphasis just seems to be so much more. And like I said, people probably listening to this going, it can't be that good. Trust me.
Yeah,
I think I'd have to sit down and genuinely think about this because games like Shadow of the Colossus, even Dragon Age, I remember really enjoying the soundtracks. I think this is better than all of them. I know it doesn't hurt because you're listening to themes that you're used to. I was going to say, but that's only 50% of the themes, 40% maybe. I'd say there's 50 to 60% new songs, and all of them. I mean, the Ice Temple music is ridiculous. I mean, it's just you go in there. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, this feels huge because the music is making me go, oh my gosh, what have I got to do? It's just ridiculous.
It does kind of, just by listening to you guys talk about it, I don't want to play it until I know more about the series because it sounds like it's a Zelda game for Zelda fans. Because I'm sure it's a fantastic game, but it will kill me to know that there's these little touches that I'm not picking up on, and it sounds awesome.
It definitely is. I mean, which is nice because obviously what they've been doing with some games, with Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, if we're honest, was trying to make Zelda games for a wider audience.
Yeah.
And someone, you could still play it. It's still very accessible, but
I enjoyed them, but I think the reason,
they weren't Zelda games now.
I think the reasons I enjoyed them was because I wanted them that badly.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
I think it was
totally agree.
that I was so desperate for a new Zelda game that was still like the old Zeldas. Because I had grown up with Oracles of Seasons and Ages, and we'll go back to talk about them in a little bit, I guess. But I think I wanted them so badly that I was willing to forgive a lot.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And this doesn't do that. I think I said in my review, like, they almost felt like Zelda games for the sake of having Zelda games.
Yeah.
Whereas this feels like it wants to be the complete opposite of that. It wants to be remembered as this really important Zelda game. It wants to sit along the likes of Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past, Link's Awakening on the Game Boy, which I still love. It wants to be talked about in the same, and it will do, and it will do as well, because it's just such a magnificent adventure, if nothing else. And it just, like I say, the fact that you can now choose which dungeon you go to first, like,
yeah, I mean, tell us more about this whole system.
Well, it's weird. Like, I struggled with it, and I think I look back. The reason I struggle with it now is because I've played too many Zelda games. Because I was convinced, basically, when you get to low rule, spell LO rule, low rule, we'll call it. That's the Dark World, right? Mm-hmm. And when you get there and you've got your 7 dungeons that you go to after you've collected your 3 pendants and you've got the Master Sword and you just one badass mother, you can go anywhere you want. You pick whatever temple you want, as long as you go get the relevant item from, it's Ravio or Rovio. No, it's Ravio.
Ravio?
Yeah. As long as you get the relevant item from them, it's still very much like if you're in the Ice Temple, you need the Ice Rod. Classic Zelda. So you still need that. But you can go there straight away. And I struggle with that because I'm so used to thinking I can't go to this dungeon until I'm 75% of the way through the game, because that's how it's structured. So sometimes I got to what I now realise in hindsight were puzzles that you had to solve out to get to a new area and gone, can't get in there yet, haven't got the right stuff. And I realised in this moment of sort of ingenuity, I can get in there. I have the tools. It's a puzzle. So you solve that puzzle. Now, I didn't do it like this.
That sounds interesting, because I would have kind of almost thought that a lot of... we talked about this in the past, and this is why I think Zelda games started to lose their luster for me over the years, is the fact that you arrive somewhere, you can't work out how to do something, and you must be getting this feeling now. Yeah. You just done Lord Jabba Jabba's belly.
Yeah, which seems so intimidating.
You think, how can I do it? Because you don't know that the boomerang exists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you know the boomerang exists, suddenly everything makes sense.
Yeah.
But I imagine...
I could stroll through that now in minutes, whereas I was in there for over an hour at least, just like kind of...
Yeah, well, I was when I first played it. But I mean, how...
I had to go ages,
Because surely it's a bit overwhelming, right, when presumably near the start it just says, here are all the items.
It is, but I won't lie, I don't think I approached it the way they wanted me to approach it. I still went, I'm doing that on that one. So even when I got stuck on a dungeon, because basically when you die, all your rented items go back to Ravio. So you have to go and get them back. Now, the point of that is not only to make death more of a threat. So when you do have the bleeping hearts, because you're down to 3 or less, you think, I can't want to die. I don't want to lose all my stuff and have to start all again, basically. It's to do it so that if you do die on the ice dungeon, and then you go back to Ravio's house, you can go, you know what, I'm going to leave. I've done 50% of the ice dungeon. I'll come back to that later. I will go do the fire dungeon or the water temple, or I'll go and do something instead. Now, because I'm so ingrained in Zelda lore, I didn't do it like that on my first playthrough. My second playthrough, because there's a hero mode that unlocks once you finished it, which is a harder version of the game, which I obviously went through. That time I went, I'm going to try it. I'm going to be a lot more freeform with it. And if I do get stuck, when you start playing like that, you realise it's so open. It is so open, and it's just so you just go exploring. If you get stuck, just go exploring somewhere else. You can always get there. You just got to figure out the puzzle. And that kind of freedom, much like the original Zelda in 1986 or whenever it was, is refreshing. It is refreshing because they did that so long ago. They can do it now, and it feels right. And I did miss,
mate. I've just remembered. I've got to bring Dark Souls in for you.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Because I find this fascinating because it seems like, in a weird way, Dark Souls was a reminder to games of what games used to be.
Yeah,
particularly Zelda.
Certainly sounds that way.
I'm seeing that link so much. Just that you
link the pun.
There we are. Just the idea that you play a game and it doesn't really care whether or not you know where you're going at first. It's just like, you're going to have to figure this out.
And also, I mean, like what you just described of being like, you know what, like you get stuck, you think, actually, you know what, I'm not doing this, I'm going to go back in somewhere else. That is how like Demon Souls and Dark Souls works.
Yeah.
I'd be like, you either choose that you're going to persist and you're going to be like, no, I'm going to do this. And you set yourself a challenge and you go, I'm going to do this. Or you just go, no. That's what we've done on live stream this week.
Constantly.
We just go, no, I can't do this, boss. And you just literally just abandon
it
and go and do something else.
It's very similar then. I mean, I did miss Because there's still big chests. There are still certain items you have to get in dungeons. I won't tell you what, but the majority of items you need are from Ravio.
Well, that does change things.
But I did miss the excitement of going, what's it going to be? What's it going to be? But then I've had that excitement in the past, so I've got no problem in doing something new. And like I said, by the end of the game, I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Does it have new items that are interesting?
Yeah, it's got a few new items.
Because I was going to say, because I liked it in Twilight Princess when they had stuff like the swingy mace and stuff.
Yeah.
Because it was nothing like that before.
Yeah.
Really.
No, there are. I'm not going to tell you what they are just because when you find out what it does, I laughed. I thought it's so ridiculous.
If people start telling me what the new items do, and I'm sure actually that a lot of reviews for that game will start talking about that sort of stuff because that's what people... Presumably, what people think they want to know about, but that's a massive spoiler for me.
No, it is. It's huge, and it's just. By the end of the game, I did love it, and I saw what it was doing because you can still play it like a Zelda game if you want. Like I did. I just went through the temples in the order I wanted, and I kept going back. I kept repeating them every time that I died.
How do you know which items you'll need when you go to the?
You definitely know. There's my fire temple. What do I need? How about the fire rod?
Is that so? With all the stuff that you rent, is it quite obvious by the names?
I don't know because being who I am, I rented all the items. I just went in there and I went buy that one, that one. You can buy them to a certain point. They cost a lot of money though, and you can get unlimited rupees now. There's no limit on the amount of rupees you can get. But being me, and I just rented all the items. So if you've got sort of
experience, if you died just after that.
Oh, it happens a lot. If you've got experience with Zelda, you can always kind of work out. And if not, just experimenting with them and knowing what the dungeon's layout is, any intellectual person, even if you're pretty stupid, you'd be able to figure it out.
Going to one of the temples, getting far enough in and not realising, and then having to just go back to the shop to get it.
A few people will do that, but I think they'll enjoy that as well because they can even just put that away in the back of their brain and be like,
think,
right,
we can go
Sand Temple, I need that. Now I'm going to go off and do this.
Yeah, the idea that you can just go wherever you need kind of gets around that.
It sounds very interesting.
It's an incredible game. I mean, it really is. And a lot of people are going, he's such a Zelda fanboy. And I do love Zelda games. It's probably my favourite franchise.
But you're clearly not mad because we've given you the tests. We've said, like, what do you think about the ones on the DS?
I wouldn't give them 10s. I'd probably give them like 7s or 6s, maybe even. But this feels like a return to form almost. I mean, I don't mean it because I enjoyed Skyward Sword. I won't give Skyward Sword 10 either. But I mean, in terms of handhelds, this really feels like coming off the back of remaking Ocarina of Time for the 3DS and then doing this is a ridiculous run of Zelda games.
Absolutely.
And I can't believe if you like Zelda, you won't like this.
That's the thing. I mean, basically, it's just, I wasn't able to talk about it at the time, but obviously I did recently, in a fit of madness, just decide to buy a 3DS XL so I could give Brat. But it was mainly because I saw you playing Zelda and I thought, fuck, I want that. I bought a 3DS XL as an upgrade just because I don't know. Like, the thing is, there's a bit of a weird kind of split in the fact that when people who review games and people who play games to review, I don't do as much reviewing anymore these days, but there's always a perceived wisdom from people outside of the industry that, to really kind of get a sense of whether or not a game is good, you need to play it for a very long time and, you need to really kind of delve down and work out if it's good or not. And sometimes to find gems and to really appreciate things, you do.
Yeah.
However, there are always exceptions, and you spend so much time exposed to games and looking at games that every now and then when you see something special, you just know.
Yeah, you get a feeling. Yeah, you get a feeling, definitely.
Within minutes, you just go, fuck.
Yep.
This is something, and I really got that vibe from that game.
It's funny you say it, because that's how I felt about it. I was excited about it, obviously, but when our review code dropped in...
I wasn't even excited. I was... Because I'm like I feel like I'm a recovered Zelda fanboy.
Yeah.
In fact, I used to love it, and there was a point at which I used to be able to proudly say that I had finished every Zelda game.
How many years sober have you been, Matt?
Well, apart from the first two games, actually, I didn't ever play the Legend of Zelda. We'll talk about these in a little bit, actually. But apart from that, I've finished all of them. The only ones I haven't played now, I still haven't played. I gave up on Spirit Tracks because I thought,
it's the same game.
Off. It's the same game again.
The same game.
And I haven't played Skyward Sword. But I'm planning to resolve that at some point when I have a life and free time again.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I mean, this is the device almost perfect as well because obviously it's portable and it's handheld, so you can dip in and dip out. And it's the
Christmas, mate. Christmas.
Honestly, man,
I've got to spend
it's
some
the
time.
best Christmas game. And the amount of I'm not going to tell you what they are because I have mentioned a few in my review. But I won't. Actually, I will mention one. It's because I just want to talk about it. The best thing about Zelda is when you stumble across these weird side quests or these weird kind of mini games that they have. And there's two in particular that just... I spent so much time with them. They're nothing. But one is... I think I mentioned this in the podcast, actually. One is you pay a man 50 rupees and he goes, come into my rupee garden. You have 30 seconds. You have 30 seconds.
Simon, we've told you about this. You do not follow those people.
I love it because I honestly get the impression that the people that do the writing for Zelda don't realise that seems weird.
I don't
It's
know.
supposed to be odd in terms of how the world is.
I think they do. I think
you
they're all
should
mad.
see some of the weird characters. I mean, there's less in. There are less. I mean, actually, no. The guy who owns the Happy Mask shop
Yeah, it's insane.
is in
Yeah.
Ocarina of Time, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of the main characters in like Majora's Mask.
Yeah.
But
He's potty.
But when you meet characters like that, there are definitely some characters in Ocarina of Time and stuff.
Oh, definitely. And I think the sense of humour in this game is fantastic. Like the way it tells you how to save, I'll save that one because it's hilarious. But
yeah, you're in a rupee garden.
You're in a rupee garden and you have 30 seconds to collect as many rupees as you want, but you have to keep the time on your head. There's no timer on screen, and it's so incredibly fun. I don't know why.
Do you have to get out before?
Yeah, you have to talk to him before 30 seconds up, otherwise you lose all your rupees.
Oh, man.
So
that's cool.
But you can get, if you time it well, and if you use all your items in the right way, you can get about 300 rupees, which is a lot because to rent items it costs about 300 rupees to buy them. It's about 800 to like 1200 rupees. So rupees become this really important thing in A Link Between Worlds. So that little minigame, I was like, right. I never did it properly. I either went 1 second over or I was 4 seconds, because the closer you get, he'll give you a bonus. So if you get there, I think with like a second to go, he doubles the cost.
That is
sounds
actually
badass.
like the Crystal Maze.
Oh, it's just like the Crystal Maze.
Up a lot, but that is.
It is. And then there's this other one where once you're in low rule, you go to this, and if you Link to the Past fan, you remember, you go to this wooded area. I just walked in there because I wonder what's in there. It's a game of baseball. But it's the most fun game. I played it for about an hour. It's just I can't stop playing it, and it's just wonderful. It's just fantastic. It made me feel like a kid again.
I think that, to be honest, these days that is the highest accolade for a game.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm not sure if it's. We did a thing about our games of the generation. Has they been going up yet or not?
They're going up from tomorrow. Tomorrow they're going up. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
From tomorrow, check out on the website then, because all of us are individually.
One a day they're going up.
Yeah, individually we're all doing our kind of games of the generation piece.
Yeah.
And something I touched upon with one of my games is just that thing of being like, it's a recurring theme now as I get older, is my knowledge and passion for games as a medium is just increasing all the time. But then the amount of time, the moments at which I play games and feel the same joy that I did when I was younger and discovering them for the first time and discovering new genres and, being somebody who likes pretty much every type of game, just realizing the scope of what you could do with them kept me so excited.
Yeah, totally agree.
Doesn't happen as much anymore.
No, it doesn't.
And I mean, like, it's like Dark Souls doesn't make me feel young again, but it makes me feel like I've not played games before.
And that's what this did. And I don't replay games. I mean, I never replay games. I don't see the point of it. And as soon as I'd finished this, I replayed it. I started straight again. I went on hero mode because it's a lot harder, and I wanted to see, what the challenge was like. But I wanted to stay in the world. It was just too delightful not to stay there. And it's my game of the year. And it's not just my game of the year, it's a game of the year by a country mile, and I love The Last of Us.
Wow.
I thought The Last of Us I was impressed with GTA 5 technically, and I think it's a wonderful game.
That's really
But
something.
in terms of emotion and stuff, I thought Last of Us was incredible. But this is still mild. I mean, it's easily my game of the year. It was just, it does so many things that I've always wanted Zelda games to do. And it even has a mechanic that I wasn't massively sold on for half the game. I don't particularly like the item thing. I don't hate it, but I didn't like it. It was only when I got to the end and I kind of looked back and thought, I am glad it was like that. But everything else is too good. Like the dungeon design we haven't talked about. There's been a lot of criticism pointed at Zelda games for repeating the dungeons, especially with block puzzles. And it's true, they did overdo them. It doesn't do that. I mean, there are some, but not a lot. And some of it's just the way it teases you. Like, I mean, this is more for a Zelda fan, I'll admit. But the way it uses some of the enemies that you're used to, the way it tricks you and makes you think you have to do a puzzle like it used to be, but twists it a bit. The way it uses 3D to come up with new puzzles is just wonderful. Like, this game would not be as good without the 3D. I'm not going to tell you why, but just the way it uses dimensions and depth of field and stuff like that. And the dungeons they're genius. I couldn't come up with them. Some of them are so intelligent.
Well, that is interesting, because I know Zelda dungeons in my head enough that I reckon I could probably knock up a couple of Zelda dungeons in my head before lunch.
You will figure them out to a certain point.
Yeah.
But then, intentionally so, then it will go, but what about this? And you'll literally go, oh yeah. Well, that's no idea. In one of them, this is a small spoiler, but if you really, really want to go in completely blind, just turn down for literally 30 seconds. On one of them, you find the boss key in 5 seconds. And you're like, have I just broken this dungeon? And then this whole other thing opens. You go, oh my gosh. And it just tricks you. It tricks you entirely. It's so clever. Honestly, I would marry this game, and I think I'd be happy for the rest of my life.
Shit, son.
It's so good. It's so good.
That's the best box quote I've ever heard.
Not only is it one of my sort of favourite games of this year, I think it could go straight into my top games ever list.
I
Like,
would
it's
have full sex with this game.
not half sex, man.
Full sex.
Full sex.
With my shirt off.
And there's so many characters as well. So many characters you meet are just, it's ridiculous and lovely and stupid.
I've obviously already been sold, and I've been sold off the music alone, which is dumb, but you know what?
No, music's important. Music to me is almost one of the most important things in games.
I think sound design is the quickest way to the heart.
We're not allowed to talk about this mentally, and I love you, Nintendo, but come on, your bizarre embargoes, even now, we can't talk about this out. The Street Pass functionality is tremendous, but that's all I can say.
Brill. Okay. Well, I look forward to playing that. When's it out?
November 22nd.
November 22nd.
Yeah,
that's the same day as PS4.
Yeah.
Well, that's my fucking decision sorted. Honestly, I feel like a bloody parrot, but today, especially, no disrespect to any people I work with, but obviously, next gen excitement has got so insane.
Oh, it's here. Yeah, it's tantamount.
It's mental, and people are getting so excited about next gen, and yet we don't really have any promise of all the reviews coming out for these games, and
lackluster. Yeah,
nothing's
definitely.
any good.
Yeah.
And we also, because it's weird, because we have so many good games coming out on everything else.
Yeah.
And it's just, I find it a bit weird how everyone in the industry is getting so excited about the PS4 and Xbox One. And as far as I'm concerned, I'll probably get excited about next year, maybe.
Yeah.
Because for now,
Nintendo owns this Christmas.
it's literally like the 3DS is just fucking badass.
Oh, yeah. And also, because I'm going to go on record that no one, unless you're a Zelda fan, has listened to this, so we'll sneak this in. Mario's brilliant too. We're not allowed to say that, but Mario is brilliant too. Like, Jenny, if you've got Wii U and you've been sat there for a year going, where the fuck are my games? Mario will blow your brain as well.
I'm looking forward to that.
It's
And that's something I want to play, but yeah. Anyway.
I do love that they're launching this game on the same day as a major console.
They don't give a
shit.
shit.
They don't care, man. They probably don't need to. Like,
I think it's a different market.
Yeah.
Oh, I do.
yeah. It's wonderful that they just do that.
But it's like even
It's
you,
true.
if you went from Ocarina of Time to this, like even you would get something, because they know that a lot of people play Ocarina of Time. Like when you go into the castle, there's just like these mosaics, I call them, of the Ocarina of Time story, and you can read them in chronological order, or you can just and it just sort of slowly fills you in. They look really nice, and there's a guard next to them if you talk to, and he gives you a little nudge, like, oh, I used to know that guy. I don't know you didn't. It's 100 years ago. And he goes, oh yeah, I didn't really. But it's just it treats people, as if with assumed knowledge, and that always makes you feel like you're part of a special club. And I loved it. There's so many references to other Zelda games. Like I say, the one in Ravio's house or Link's house is
I cannot wait.
disgusting.
I ain't going to buy the piss out of that. Let's have a quick rush through that, actually. Just talk, because it's been like the first Zelda game came out in 1986, which was the year after I was born.
4 years
Yeah,
before.
2 years after. Yeah. You weren't even alive, man.
I wasn't.
Oh, man.
Disgusting.
You were just you were a twinkle in your father's eye.
You weren't even a sperm.
People used to say twinkle in your father's eye, and then when actually, it was only a couple of years ago that I really thought about that
It
phrase.
sounds much nicer
and
than
it's
it
so
is.
weird. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's not.
It's basically means like, that was the point at which your dad was just basically going, I want to fuck her.
Yeah.
Which is like, when you think about it like that, you're like, that's not a nice phrase.
Lovely.
That's a horrible phrase.
But it's weird. You think how far it's come from the original. I mean, obviously, A Link Between Worlds is very similar to it, but there's no story in the original Zelda. You made up your own story.
Yeah.
An old man went, here, have a sword. Cheers, mate. And then you picked any dungeon you wanted to, and off you
I
went.
tried to play it a couple of years ago, and I found it really frustrating. I didn't like it at all.
But I can imagine it is, and especially in 1986. To
It was
do
stuff
that
like
in 1986.
You kill the monsters, and then it'd be really hard to kill the monsters sometimes because the controls are rubbish.
and because you weren't supposed to be at that part. of it.
Then you'd leave the screen and come back, and they'd be back instantly.
Oh, that was,
and it was like,
yeah,
what?
Respawning monsters.
What?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really punishingly hard. But also, I mean, it's a classic problem of old games, of the fact that it was, at the time, it was like this huge world. You can go wherever you want.
It's an open world game. Like, it really is. Go wherever you want. Yeah.
And that's why I'm so actually excited about what they've done with this, because it feels like Zelda had forgotten what it was. And it sounds like, and I'll be interested to read all the reviews and see if other people make this connection. But just from what I'm hearing, it sounds like they've noticed that Dark Souls has brought back what Zelda was, and they've been then like inspired by that.
I think so. I think there's some other games as well that I think they've looked at. They're not stupid, Nintendo. I think they've looked at a broader canvas and gone, what can we do? I mean, the biggest thing it has going for it, like I said, is that it's a sequel to A Link to the Past. That's the same with art style. That's the same with the characters that they brought back. They look the same too. And that's been a really, really positive influence on the series, because they've obviously gone back to Link to the Past and gone, why is that so good? Well, we have to take all that. And it's still good now. It's a classic game. It's not any worse.
I was going to say, like, let's just skip Adventure of Link, because, I mean...
I like Zelda 2.
You quite like
I've
Zelda
finished
2,
it
right?
twice. Which kind of sums me up. Now, it's not a Zelda game. It's some weird side platformer thing.
I know, right?
If I made you play Zelda
It's
2, you would not be a
side-
happy man, brat.
It's not...
Oh, it's
good.
weird.
A
It's like
platformer.
Fax Anandu. If you remember, Fax Anandu was a game by... I can't remember now, but it came out on the NES. It was a lot like that, but Fax Anandu was better. Here's my Nintendo geek
There's
knowledge coming
a...
out.
there's a real world, because you know the thing I always remember about that is there was a CGI, well not CGI, it was like an animated intro for it.
That's right.
There was like a cartoon that was really weird. There's a YouTube video I found out recently. My godfather, because he was telling me his kids and him, like his kids recorded a kind of like live action version of the intro to Zelda 2. And it's like really bad acting, and it's got loads of views on YouTube. It's just mental how it's like. He's like, "Oh yeah, do you know about Zelda? I'm in this thing." And it's like you're pretending to be Ganon or something. It's just ridiculous.
But Zelda 2 is not a Zelda game. Don't go back and play Zelda 2 now. Like, don't do it. But it was an I appreciate Nintendo because they had this massive hit on their hands, and they went, "No, we want to try something else." And to come out,
I don't know if that's how it worked. It came out a year later.
Well, okay,
it seems like very much they just went, "Shit, get something out."
Well, true. But to go from that to A Link to the Past, is huge.
I'm kind of cheating here because I've got the timeline in front of me. But 4 years later,
nice, very good.
1991, we had A Link to the Past.
Yeah, which was,
that still stands up.
You could play that, Brat, now. I'd play the Game Boy Advance version, and it wouldn't blink. And this is why this game is so good. It's why Link Between Worlds is so good, because it uses that template. It's still, when you actually think about now how big that was at the time. The world was huge back then in 1991. It's like, this can't be this big.
Is that when
it's
they started
ridiculous.
to introduce the story elements to it? Or
Zelda 2 has story elements to it, but this was the proper one.
Fucking rubbish.
Well, yeah, and also Link to the Past is the one where it started doing 3 pendants, 7 pendants, then a magic dance going to happen. And, it kind of really enforced that structure. Yeah. And I understand why Nintendo stuck with it, because everybody loved it. So they thought, well, we've obviously hit something here. So,
But yeah, obviously, also, it had a lot of surprises, like, the whole Dark World stuff.
Oh, that's the thing, because, again, back then, I remember I did the first 3 pendants, or whatever it was, and I thought, it's a big, solid chunk of game. And I thought, that was good. And it goes, welcome to the real game. And you've got a whole different world, and you've got 8 other dungeons, or whatever it is. You're like, this is huge. It was like GTA 3.
Whereas with Ocarina of Time, I was panicked because when you probably worked out that it wasn't the end of the game after 3 temples.
No.
Just because it's almost like now it's become such a cliche that games do that all the time. Of doing the old 1-2 of going, hey, you've finished the game. Yeah. No, you haven't. But like when I was playing Ocarina, I started to panic. I was like,
you thought you'd take those 3 stones back and then...
Well, no, I was like...
Well, it doesn't give you any real warning. Because only the second time they did it after that, don't forget. So it wasn't like it was really ingrained.
Well, I guess...
I knew there was more to happen, but I didn't know where it was going.
How it was going to happen, yeah.
And I kind of assumed, because I knew you were going to become older, but I kind of assumed that
that's literally where I've got to.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's jump ahead a bit.
I do need to backtrack ever so slightly. I think we've been talking about it on the podcast over the last couple of weeks, and I may have said Ganondorf was getting a bit of a hard time and thought it was.
Yeah, moron.
He's just rebranded himself as the king of evil.
You support him.
I said he wasn't evil.
You support him. He's definitely evil, Ganon.
Yeah, okay,
he's definitely evil
as fuck.
Yeah.
But yeah, I set you the homework to get back to the castle. Yeah, and you've had the big twist reveal.
I think I said to you
Have
whilst
you had
I was
the
playing it, I was
horse
like,
bit?
No. However,
Okay.
I knew from the intro that
fine. Of course, yeah.
would be a horse involved. But I have met it when I was younger, and I played a nice song, and there was like a little, it likes you now. So I imagine now when I get the horse, it'll.
You got a tough thing to do before you get that horse. Yeah, you got to get involved in a race.
I played
easy.
a song.
The thing is lovely about it, right? Because you've just come back to the world, right? So what happens? You're in the Cathedral of Light, or what? Time.
Yeah.
Oh God, I had a horrible awakening when I walked out of there because I knew they said it was going to be a bit different, and they hinted.
Oh, you've grown up now, then.
Yeah, so
you've seen how Hyrule's been
only
absolutely
into Hyrule Castle, and it's like desolated.
He's ruined it. Yeah.
I walked out into the second area, and I was like, oh man, this looks very different. And there's some like kind of weird zombie creatures. I'm not sure what they are. One of them jumped on the back of Link and strangled him to death, and I had no health left, and he died. So I've grown up. I was like, right, time to save the world. Here we go. Yeah. Walked outside, died.
Got killed by a zombie.
So
that's one of my favourite reveals of all time.
It's really frightening.
Just because it's like
14.
Yeah, you feel like you're making some progress, and then suddenly you go out, and it's just the sound design as well. It's just really bleak, desolate.
That wind going as well.
Those things scream at you when they see you.
Of course, and they make you freeze, don't they? As well. Oh man,
and it's just like you go around and you realise it's like time has passed, and you'll see, but like everything's kind of gone really bad, and everywhere you go is like everything's a bit fucked up, and it's really, really cool.
Oh,
but
it's
also
awesome.
Something. This isn't a spoiler really, but it's something that you'll realise, because I love this is something you talked about a few times of just being like getting across the. You'd be like, I got across to the other side of the field, and then just before I got there, like the big gate went up, and I had to wait until the morning. It's like I swear, in that game they purposefully made it so it's impossible.
Oh yeah, I should try. Yeah, you can't
from there to the castle without the gate going down, right? But the reason for that is because when you get the horse, it means that then you can do it.
Exactly. It's always progression. There's always a sense of
it means
progression
you
in
get that
game.
sense of satisfaction of just being able to get there just before night. So you're like,
I remember that being an ongoing thing. Go get to the gate. Go get to the gate. Go.
It becomes like a mini game within the game.
It's so true. It's so good.
I had a little bit of a dumb moment after I'd got all 3 stones. I was running back to the castle, and I was in a bit of a rush because I wanted to start the podcast. And I was like, oh, for Christ's sake, the gate's gone up again.
Just like real life.
And then I got there, I was like, oh, actually, this is important. Something big is about to happen.
This is Ganon, and he's running.
Oh no.
He's stolen someone.
Yeah.
No,
He's not evil.
Nah.
I just want you to get to that point because obviously it's nice because all the things that all the characters have said up to you up at that point about like, oh, when you're older and stuff, and now it's like, oh shit, now I am
that
older.
reveal as well when he pulls the sword out of the stone, for lack of a better term, and then all of a sudden he grows up, and the music and the way it builds.
Don't be alarmed. Yeah,
good grief, it's good.
Yeah, it's classy times.
I would point, obviously in between then as well, they put Link's Awakening out on the Game Boy.
Link's Awakening was the first Zelda game I played.
Well, that started out as a side project. People in Nintendo were just making that for fun, and then Miyamoto saw it and he went, make that a real thing, because it's nothing like any other Zelda game. It's really dark. Well,
that's
damn
similar,
Windfish,
but it's different.
Well, it has ideas in it, but obviously you've got Mario characters in it. And you got Bow Wows.
Oh God,
Yeah, well, has Bow Wows because they're making it as like a little folly. Oh, I'll put a Bow Wow in it. And then Miyamoto saw it and thought, no, do it.
And
go,
the Chain
go,
Chomp, is that the same thing?
Yeah. It's like, why?
Yeah, the Chain Chomp was like a whole side quest where you had to take a Chain Chomp for a walk. That's mental.
And that's where the owl was first introduced. That terrifying owl. And the Windfish was this terrifying thing they kept talking about. It was a giant egg.
Well, that's kind of the genius of it. And apologies if you haven't already played Link's Awakening yet, but we're going to talk about it now completely because it is like a game of like, if you should have played that one now. If
you've had 20 years.
You've literally had 20 years. Anyway, what I loved about the fact that it did have Mario characters in it, but then it kind of made sense of that because the whole point about Link's Awakening was it wasn't real.
Exactly, yeah.
It was all a dream.
Yeah.
But it was kind of wonderful because, I mean, this was at a point at which obviously Dallas had probably been by then anyway, but the whole it was all a dream thing hadn't really become a horrible cliche.
No. It worked very well in this.
But it worked
explained
really well
a lot as well.
Well, it was just because it worked so well because it didn't do it as a twist.
Yeah.
It did it as a gradual realization.
That's right. I totally agree.
And so it didn't just go, oh shit, that was silly, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But it wasn't real. You kind of realized towards the end this idea of like the dreamer awakens and
That's
stuff.
right.
You kept finding like just things like that would say the dreamer will awaken.
Yeah.
And
you're like, what the hell's that
our
mean?
world will be destroyed.
Yeah.
And it has this really kind of Cthulhu vibe almost.
Yeah, it
about
does.
like this
Destruction coming.
Yeah, I was going to compare it to life on Mars. Yeah, that shows the difference in literature there.
But no, you're going to get this impression that the Windfish is dangerous and it's going to destroy the world and it's some sort of horrible boss. And that's why you spend the whole game like thinking that maybe the Windfish is going to be the final boss. Or something, but then actually, it's more sinister than that, and it's just the idea that none of it's real.
Yeah,
and it's sad because it's like you're just trapped in the Windfish's dream, and the only way you can leave is by waking it up. But then when you wake the Windfish up, it means that all the characters you've met,
all the friends you've
forever.
made? Yeah,
Life on Mars was a fine example then. Absolutely.
Okay.
I never got that far with Life on Mars.
Spoilers. Thanks
yeah.
for that, Braz.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Braz.
that.
Well, you know it from the first episode.
Well, that's
Okay.
It's obviously not
But
real. Yeah.
the thing I love about Link's Awakening as well, just the way it starts, just stranded on a beach.
Yeah.
Stranded on a beach. What is this place? What is this world?
And you really
go
feel for
find
the
out.
people because it's not like a romantic story, or but you do make friends and stuff.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely.
You definitely have more of a sense of like, because obviously in lots of the other Zelda games you find yourself going around and meeting new people all the time, but in this it was quite, well, it had a weird mechanic where you spent all your time going back to this one town that was like quite a big town with lots of...
It had a real emphasis on fetch quests as well, didn't it? So it connects all the people together like they all knew each other with fetch quests and stuff.
Well, it did this thing as well, because you get that in Ocarina and loads of the other games.
Yeah.
There's like you've seen like the Bunny Mask quest in Ocarina.
Yeah.
That's kind of an optional thing you can do. But in this, it was essential.
Yeah, you had to do it.
And you didn't know it was essential until quite late in the game when you realised that to get something, you needed to have an item that you're like, well, how do I even get that?
Yeah, I got to do the fetch quest.
And then you realise that there's this chain of events that you get items until you get the thing you need. But it created that sense of... It was really smart because it meant that you... If it was an optional thing, it might not have worked, but because you had to do it, it created a sense of community.
Yeah.
And it meant
it did. It was lovely.
I can't remember if I cried, but I think I might have done because I'm a massive pansy. I'm a proper grade A flower. But yeah, I think I found it really emotional.
It was definitely a more emotional game, and I think I swear I may be making this up, but I think that's one of the reasons Miyamoto said, do it, progress with it, because he was like, it's so different and had much more sort of emotional, weighing on the series.
David Lynch's Zelda.
It was a bit like David Lynch's Zelda, because it was just so sort of weird and quirky compared to what they just released. And then after that, I'm probably getting my timeline, and then the Panasonic games came out. Now, I'm going to reveal something. I played them too. They're awful. They are truly dreadful, horrible games. Never play them. I think we just go straight over them.
I think that they're not. Yeah, they're basically like not really on the. They're not on the canon timeline on Wikipedia.
They
so
shouldn't
we'll
be.
ignore them.
Honestly,
They shall
they
not
are.
exist.
They are awful.
I must say, a final thing I'll say about Link's Awakening. Winks Awakening.
Winks
That's like I'm
Awakening.
being really racist. Apologies for that. Is I think it was like the 1-2 punch. You know, it was the fact that it was silly, and that's why you're like, oh, it's got Mario characters, it's got Bow Wow, it's got all this silly stuff in it. It kind of made you feel like it was just a flippant bit of fun, and that meant that you were just like it had a really cheery atmosphere. That game, it felt like really because it didn't have the kind of impending doom that a lot of the other Zelda games do. Like obviously, you know, A Link to the Past starts off with it being like seriously stressful.
Oh yeah.
Before you
Bad-
get to the
bad
kind
shit
of
happening.
that was like that was like the opening credits almost
Yeah.
after you've done the whole intro. When you realise that actually it was quite dark, it was really sad.
Oh man, it got really dark. Like
'cause-
it's a horrible, foreboding atmosphere at some points in that game where you feel almost lost.
I didn't want to finish it. I remember when I first played it on the Game Boy, I remember I didn't want to finish it.
Yeah.
When it got to the point of waking up the Windfish, I didn't want to.
Yeah.
Because I knew that that's what I had to do. But, you know, it's a bit like Shadow of Colossus style thing of knowing that you have to do it because that's the game and you don't have agency within this world. You just have to go along for the ride.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Next up, I think we've got... interestingly, I think after we got Ocarina of Time, which we've talked about a lot, Majora's Mask again.
Yeah.
We talked about this quite a lot the other day.
But we should
Sounds
always mention it.
crazy.
Just
There's
the
so much to
weirdest,
talk about in that game.
craziest game ever in the. I mean, even with A Link's Awakening. I mean, just completely taken the formula, which by that point, you know, was considered not only critically amazing, but that was Zelda. That's what it did. He went, well, screw, we're not going to do that. We're going to completely change it, and we're going to put a time limit on everything. It's just like, who has the balls to do that? And it was still great. It was still great because it was so weird. And again, dark atmosphere, dark, foreboding, evil. Like, this is Zelda. This is supposed to be this.
Well, you know, the more you talk about it, the more it sounds like that's a recurring theme.
Well, no, but it is and it isn't.
Yeah.
Because this is what's interesting. Like, The Legend of Zelda didn't really have a story. Link to the Past had elements of darkness to it. Link's Awakening had a very dark streak towards the end. Ocarina of Time
Goes up and down, doesn't
goes
it?
up and
Yeah,
down
it
a lot.
switches it a lot.
Majora's Mask was just really dark.
The whole time. It never
That's the
stops
thing
being
is,
dark.
I remember when I was younger, like, I kind of feel like an idiot now because I remember when Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask were out. I was one of the people who was really like, oh, yeah, I want a dark Zelda.
Yeah.
Like, because, you know, that's something you always get people asking for. And you always get, like, fan-made films of being like, hey, here's a new leaked version of a Zelda game. And it'll be, like, a Zelda that looks really realistic and it's really gritty. And this whole dark and gritty thing is basically consistently what teenagers want because, you know, it's really predictable and quite tedious creatures. But I feel stupid in retrospect because I remember thinking I want a dark, gritty, adult Zelda game. And I didn't realise until I looked back recently and thought about Ocarina of Time and thought about Majora's Mask that despite the bright colours and the cheery demeanour of things, they are dark
Oh, the
games.
stories are horrendous. About a
And
man that wants to
actually-
destroy the world.
It's about tone as well, because I think if you have something that is consistently really grim, it doesn't feel as dark sometimes as things where like you have the opportunity to see the contrast of happy times and
That's it.
times.
I think Nintendo are so good at making sort of colourful, atmospheric worlds with a dark edge. Like the moon in Majora's Mask is terrifying. There are certain elements of Ocarina of Time which obviously are really, really horrific.
Coming
and
out of into Hyrule.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo have a
Being
real,
strangled to death.
for a company that are now tagged with cutesy and, you know, rightfully so for many reasons. They can do it when they want it. When they want it to, like, even Low Rule, if we go back to the latest one, that comes out, it's not nice, it's horrible, and the world is broken, and you've got these evil monsters that you'll recognise, but you know, they can do it, and they can do it very, very well when they want to, and they know exactly what they're doing.
It is that twist. I mean, I honestly think, especially talking about being strangled to death. When I started playing Ocarina of Time, when I was like, you know, running around, what's that, Kakariko Village, and like using chickens to glide and collect chickens for a bottle and stuff, and doing all this fun
What a
sweet
eureka moment.
stuff.
What a eureka moment.
Yeah. You love the chicken thing. You're like, I could do this for chickens.
The fact, we've talked about Zelda puzzles.
But it's that thing of like, if you told me that, in about 2 hours, you'll be being strangled to death by a zombie in this dark,
they
brown,
benefit from
grey
that contradiction.
Yeah.
I honestly, just stepping out and seeing what the Cathedral of Time or whatever it's called,
Temple of Time,
that's it. And just seeing the state of it and seeing what had happened to the place.
Oh, it's crazy.
It like blew my mind, and actually, it stayed with me for a long time.
Oh, me too.
Whereas like Dark Souls and stuff, which obviously, you know, we've made a link a lot, is is like consistently dark.
Yeah.
Like actually, no, Demon Souls more. Dark Souls is interesting; it has more levity. But been playing Demon Souls, and Jesus Christ, it's like it does get you. Actually, there's work in a way, but obviously that's more verging on like horror almost in terms of like
I'm played
style.
It seems that way. Yeah.
Demon Souls is fucking bleak.
Yeah,
like it's so consistently horrible and dark and grim.
Interesting because it's from software Japanese studio. Maybe it's just Japan knows how to.
I think they do have a better grip at it than we do.
Yeah,
I think the thing is that a lot of the time Western developers, when they try and introduce this sort of this contrast of light and dark, what they try and do is they try and build up characters that you grow attached to, and then they try and force them to go through kind of negative emotions. It's much more based. I think a lot of Western game design in that stream is based on television more and based on like
I think there's a point. Yeah.
And based on characters and you like relating to a character and relating to the situations they're in. Whereas often with games like this, Japanese games tend to focus, I think, a bit more on broader themes rather than social things and rather than like psychology. I think Western games are more about the individual.
I agree with that. Yeah, definitely. I think that's why they're so good.
It comes down to that actually, whether you're kind of, this is a bit wide, but talking about like collectivist cultures or individualistic cultures. I think that's a major difference. You look at games like, I'm sorry, it's tangent as fuck.
That's fine.
You look at games like Final Fantasy VII. Like obviously that was quite an impactful game in terms of the story, but really the story there was about corporations and it was about environmental damage, and it wasn't about individuals. People remember the characters from that. They remember Aerith dying and stuff. They remember Cloud and all that stuff. But really, the really memorable themes about that game were not about any individual characters.
It's about what was going on in the
they
world.
Were about the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe a cultural difference. Anyway,
I agree. Because they do that I'm jumping forward a little bit, in Twilight Princess as well. A lot of people are down on Twilight Princess. I thought it was all... I mean, it's Ocarina of Time 2. That is that game. It's Ocarina of Time 2. But all the wolf stuff as well in that...
Wolf stuff was great.
The fact that, it gives it that kind of black... It's not really black and white, but, it sucks the colour out of the world. And all the wolf stuff is very, very odd and very, very... not difficult to navigate, but there's always... Again, there's a sense of foreboding. There's a sense that this is not right, and obviously Link turns into a wolf, which is a bit strange anyway.
What?
Yeah, and that... I'm not sure a Western studio could have done it as well, especially not as Nintendo, but even that has this... awful sense of this is not right. Something is not.
I don't think I've even met a wolf in Ocarina of Time.
Oh, you'll find them. There's wolves in Ocarina of Time. They're quite hard to kill, actually.
Oh, yeah, they are.
Use your Z targeting for those.
Actually,
Forest Temple.
I remember that, and that's I think probably the first temple you'll go to now.
Yeah, when you're an adult. Yeah,
this is nice actually because it's a nice step up because it's almost you realise those first 3 temples are like an introduction.
Yeah, tutorials.
You
massively.
get to the first couple of temples when you're an adult, and suddenly it's like shit. This is hard. Like it gives you a challenge.
That Forest Temple's not easy. Man, save your keys.
Even getting to
you
it.
go through the maze with the giants.
Oh shit, son.
Good luck, Bratters.
I think I might stop playing.
No, that temple is awesome.
But,
the atmosphere.
I understand why a lot of people didn't like Twilight Princess because they thought it's just a rerun. But that's the reason I loved it. I thought it was excellent. And
I like Twilight Princess. I think my problem with Twilight Princess, I've said this many times, but I didn't like the fact that it really hammed up this city in the sky as a lore thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's going to be a treat because it was like it kept kind of mentioning it. And I was like, you're blatantly going to go there. Because they were like, oh, this is ancient civilization in the sky. And I'm like, amazing. I know Zelda games. It means I'm going to get to go to an island in the sky. And it's going to be, oh my God, it's amazing. And then you get there, you find yourself out of a cannon to a whole new area in the sky. And I'm just like, oh my God, I've explored the whole world map. This is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And you get there, it's bollocks. It's just like some weird chicken things, land made of Tetris. It felt like it had been knocked together in an afternoon.
I think that was their inspiration. Chicken things, Tetris, let's go.
Yeah, let's just go to Nando's. I can't be fucked with this.
But my overriding memory of that, I can't even remember which area it is, but it was being in a forest area and there had been an incredible puzzle with statues. I can't even remember what you did. But I remember thinking then the reason I liked it so much was because the architecture was a lot more epic and over the top than Ocarina of Time. A lot of the areas that you got to had these almost like mythical buildings, not mythical, medieval buildings. They all Link felt a lot smaller in that world. The world felt a lot more intimidating and bigger. And that's because technology got better. And that's the thing I loved it more. Like, I remember the dungeons all felt like that. They all felt massive. I mean, they still feel big on Ocarina of Time, but just given the more powerful hardware and stuff, I just
felt they felt very familiar though. It was almost
that's true too. It did feel like Ocarina of Time.
It was nice, but it felt like actually weirdly, especially that Sky Temple, it felt like it was a 2D temple.
I know what you mean.
It felt like it was the design was exactly the same as an old 2D game, and that was a combination of it gave me a nostalgic feel, but also I don't know. I will say though that game has some amazing moments. I loved the whole section in the ice area. As I say, I loved the little swingy mace thing you got because it was just a new item, and it used the Wii controls really nicely. And I love the whole story with the big Yeti people in a soup. And that was quite dark.
Yeah.
You had to fight
definitely.
the Lady Yeti.
What? But I think the reason...
She went evil.
Yeah.
I heard Big Yeti and soup, and I was like, oh, that sounds hilarious.
No.
It was hilarious. And then it got dark.
That's got a great thing. I mean, most Zelda games do it, but you start off in the lovely forest. But they don't really... I won't go into it in case you'd like to play it, Christopher Bratt. But even when you're in your home village, they don't warm to you very much for a certain reason. And the way that makes you into a hero is really cool. The progression of there is really,
because you're a creepy little kid that just runs around smashing pots. And
No, I remember that. Yeah,
it's very well done.
Yeah, it is very well done. And you know what? I think it was mainly because I just got too hyped for it. And I think that was the game where I kind of since then I've always kept my expectations a bit back.
Yeah.
Because I was expecting Ocarina of Time 2. And it wasn't quite on par with Ocarina of Time.
No, Ocarina of Time
or
was a
Majora's
better
Mask
game.
in my mind.
No, I totally agree with that.
But I did actually, one thing it did do really well, and I won't say what this was, but there was a lovely twist at the end.
Yes, fantastic.
And actually that really got me.
Yeah, me too.
Just because it made you look at the characters in a way which I hadn't done. I thought it was a really nice, unexpected twist, because usually I'm quite good at spotting that stuff, and I didn't see it coming.
No, I didn't either.
And I think it made me cry. Everything makes me cry.
I just I thought the world. It just expanded the world, and that's the thing that I loved about it.
I
The
should
world
do
felt massive.
a list feature at some point. Games that haven't made
me cry. 5 games. 5 games.
There aren't that many. Tetris.
I cried.
Tetris and Mario Kart.
Yeah, I cried, man.
They
just disappeared. All the bricks disappeared.
I think a lot of people sort of aim the same kind of stuff at Skyward Sword. I think, but the problem with Skyward Sword is, and you've said this, Matt, is it came out too late. Came out too late in the Wii's life cycle. It should have come maybe even a year. I think it was supposed to come out a year early, but it didn't.
If it had come out a year earlier, I would have played the hell out of it.
It does introduce a lot of new themes. It does toy around with, not as much as The Link Between Worlds does, but it does toy around with that Ocarina of Time, feel a lot. And it is a lot. And with Wii Motion Plus, it is a lot of fun to do sword play and
I've
stuff
heard the
like
sword
that.
play is awesome.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
And I've heard that apparently the last section of the game, people haven't told me what it is because every time they've come close to it, I've gone,
yeah, no, I'm not going to say what it is. But that game builds.
I've heard it's like the equivalent of Metal Gear Solid 4 in terms of just having this
very good.
This lengthy section at the end where it is just massive fan service for Zelda fans.
And it's the build. Again, Ocarina of Time did it best in terms of, haven't things lovely? No, they're not. No, they're not. No, they're not. Oh my gosh, they're all fucked. And Skyward Sword does that well, but it does it in its own way. And that's the best thing. So when you get to the end of this adventure, and they all do this, they're all epic adventures and journeys, which is why I like them. But when you get to the end of this journey, especially on Skyward Sword, you think, man, I have done a lot in this game. Do you know what I mean? I've been through a lot of good times and bad times. It's true though.
Sit down, have a bit of a reflection.
And that's what's so good about it. It leaves an impression on you when you walk
I think
away.
that is the hallmark of a great adventure game.
Yeah.
Is when you sit back and you think and you actively think, wow, and you really remember the whole journey.
That's it. And it doesn't completely change the formula like A Link Between Worlds does, but it does deliberately trick you in terms of dungeons again. It plays on your expectations, says, no, you don't. You think, that's what I love that. You know that I played these other games. You're not going to let me get into this routine.
It's a great shame I haven't had a chance. I was going to try and play some Skyward Sword before today.
It's Nintendo's fault. It's Nintendo's fault. It came out too late in the Wii cycle. It should have come out a year earlier. But I would still say, if you like Zelda games, this Christmas, if you fancy a couple of Zelda games, you got your 3DS one, get that Wii one. Cheap, dirt cheap now.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, to be honest, I haven't got a Wii, and because they're just not releasing it on Wii U. I mean, you could play it on
Madness.
Wii U,
they should have released HD on Wii U. Just do it, Nintendo.
I'm currently
Come on.
tinkering with the way I might be able to play Skyward Sword without consoles. Let's just say.
I don't know what that is,
I wouldn't
Matt.
know what that would mean.
Magic,
but
I
I'm
think.
playing around with it. But it's fine. I'll do it properly because it means if they ever actually re-release it on something that's a proper format at full, I'll buy it.
Yeah.
I promise.
But it is really, really good. It follows the Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword. If you called that a trilogy, if you called it the Ocarina of Time trilogy, I don't think that would be too audacious. I think that would be fine. But it still manages, to make that format its own. Not with anything too extreme. It doesn't go, right, everything's different. They did push it like that for a while. It's completely different. No, it isn't. Don't trick me, Nintendo. But it's still a very, very, very good Zelda
Well,
game.
actually, one of my best mates is a guy called Steve Hoggerty, who used to be the editor of Official Nintendo Magazine.
Yes, he did, yeah.
And he reviewed it for Official Nintendo Magazine. And I trust his opinions on games a lot because he knows his shit. And I think he gave it a 10. And
yeah, I'd give it
every time I talked to him about Skyward Sword, he was just like, it is one of the best games I've ever played.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame that it came out on such a dying console.
It was released poorly.
And that's why I've said this many times, and I know a lot of Wii U fans will go, no, fuck off and die, you bastard. But I really hope that if they are making a new Zelda game now, that Nintendo have the sense not to make it for the Wii U and to make it as a launch title for their next console.
Everyone else does it.
I'm so tired of seeing this end of... It's just always sad because it means that they haven't learned the lesson that we saw with the PlayStation 2 of having all these amazing games coming out and no one buying them.
Yeah.
And I just think it would be really sad because they tease it. They always tease They've got in a bad habit of teasing.
What's the
new
first
Zelda.
they did with the Wii U? They had that demo, that really
I know.
HD, realistic, heavy 5 minute, and that. Look, I tell you right, Nintendo, I paid £200 for that game.
Yeah, precisely.
Like,
It's like if that game was out this Christmas.
oh my days!
At the moment, I'm sitting here going, Wii U, 200 quid with new Super Mario Brothers. I'm like, nah. I'm like, if it was Super Mario 3D World and a console for 200 quid, I'd do that.
Yeah.
As it is, sorry, I'm not
Yeah,
interested
gotta
enough
go
in that
with your
game.
gut.
Enough.
Yeah, of course.
However, if it was this Christmas, Zelda game on the Wii U, I'd pay 250 quid.
It is weird
I'd
how
just
late they-
drop that
yeah.
money. Like,
I guess it's
immediately.
because Enuma develops most of them, so he has to sort of,
Well,
check his
I
time.
understand he needs his time, and that's the problem. Is it's just more a case of I think that I hope they have the sense to not do what they did last time of being like, no, we'll just squeeze it out at the end. Of being like, no, like
Yeah.
let's actually kind of do it properly this time.
It's true because Skyward Sword did get a bad. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it sold. I don't want to make out like I do, but it did feel like it got lost.
Definitely.
Unlike other Zelda games, which is
Well, it's
terrible
because
because
most-
it looks really nice as
Most
well.
hardcore gamers, like apart from like hardcore Nintendo fans who are no offense, but a complete different breed of people.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I'm aware.
I got rid of my Wii. Because
A lot of people had.
the thing was,
yeah.
the Wii was a dangerous console for that because it had such a massive mainstream appeal. It kept its price really well, and it meant that I'd had my Wii for about a year and a half, and I had a lot of fun with it.
And all the games you wanted stopped coming. Yeah.
And the games,
I
there was
know
a
that
big
feeling.
patch
Yeah.
where there was no games coming out, and I basically thought, sod it.
Yeah. No, I know a lot of people with the same story.
Somebody coming up to Christmas said, I'll give you 200 quid for your Wii. And I said, I haven't got the box. And they just went, I don't care.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I literally got back the same price for my Wii that I paid for
Exactly.
it. a year
No,
and a half
I
ago.
know that story all over.
Precisely. So I think a lot of people sold it to their nan or their uncle. And then when it came out, everyone's like, oh, that would be awesome. But I've sold it.
Yeah.
Because if it was like most consoles where it'd be like there's no point selling the console because you only get like 70 quid for it, you wouldn't bother. But they held their price too well. Too much of a commodity.
Two things I want to touch about just quickly.
Sure.
We did mention it. And this ties into Link to the Past. This ties into A Link Between Worlds. Obviously, the Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons games, which is the same template. I mean, it's different worlds, but they use that same idea. I just want to, because the thing that I love most about them is fair play, Capcom. You took somebody else's idea and you made it your own, and they're fantastic. And they've got all the secrets in it.
They are really good.
You've got to finish both to get the last boss. I mean, that's a bit of a marketing thing, but I loved it.
It was
at
the
time.
whole. Again, that was a different time, and it kind of felt like that's what I liked about Capcom's versions of the Zelda games was that all the other Zelda games follow the formula quite strictly, but Capcom's they felt they had to do something different.
Oh, they were well different. Yeah, the rod of. The time rod
and
the season rod.
It was Oracles of Seasons and Ages. It was a Rod of Seasons, a Rod of Ages. But it was the way they had the whole the ring system. You could have 2 rings equipped.
Yeah, it was
and
good,
you could only
wasn't
get some of the rings in. You could only get some of the rings in each version.
Yeah.
But then you had to use after you finished the game, you get a code that you could enter
to get the last boss
into the other game. And then you could start new games with those codes, and you get all your rings. And then there was a special ring you could get if you completed both of them.
Yeah, and they were really cool as well because they grew too. The one thing that Capcom realised is we have got to build, and they did that.
That does sound like a big thing they push with their marketing, but you still feel so cool when you did it.
It was amazing.
That's the playground talk right there.
It was.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember specifically because me and my mate, who I don't really see anymore, but we used to play we used to be obsessed with Nintendo games, and we used to play them all. We didn't see each other very often; saw each other like once a year. And I remember we both had before we saw, we're like, all right, you get that one, you get that one, and then 6 months later when we met up, we traded cartridges.
Beautiful.
And it was that thing of, I mean, now the idea of writing down a bloody 12-digit code. Actually, I was going to slag that off, but that's still pretty much what Nintendo use for all their online stuff. So
Still learning.
Anyway,
Still learning.
But yeah, it was this thing of swapping cartridges and having these codes, and it's just so exciting.
Yeah.
But they were good. I mean, that's the thing is, I think it's weird that people almost forget that. You would think now. Can you imagine if there was if somebody said, "Oh yeah, we're going to let this third-party company make Zelda games for us"?
Never happened.
People would go mental.
Oh, it would be
because people
big
would be like, "No, they'll be rubbish."
Exactly. Yeah.
When actually back then, I don't know, maybe I was too young to really follow that kind of games press. Maybe the games media didn't operate in that way.
Yeah, I
back
can't remember.
then.
Yeah.
But there wasn't any noise at all.
Doesn't seem to be. I think the best. I don't know why I'm going to tell this story, but I feel like I have to. I think the ultimate kind of compliment for those games is I remember I was playing them. Game Boy Advance. You need the toilet. Take Game Boy Advance with you. Why not, eh? And I remember I played it for so long on the toilet. When I stood up, I didn't realise that my legs were completely numb from leaning on them and just collapsed on the floor. So, definitely not a healthy thing to do.
Made me collapse.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
another great quote. Yeah. So don't do that. But I mean, I couldn't stop playing them. I thought they were absolutely.
A couple of
fantastic.
things we should quickly go through as well. Obviously, Four Swords was interesting.
Oh my gosh, of course, Four Swords was amazing.
I didn't think it was amazing. I think the problem with Four Swords was it was only amazing if you played it with 4 people.
Yeah, which I did. That's why I loved it.
I played it with 2, and it was fun, but it was like a lot of the functionality wasn't there.
No one had it. No one had the Game Boy Advance and the GameCube to do it.
But again, that's actually boils back to something I have a problem with generally with Nintendo is they have this like amazing ability. They fucked around so much with the whole Game Boy Advance link cable and the GameCube, right?
Yeah.
And they had 4 Swords on the GameCube.
Pac-Man Verse is good too.
Now, for the past like however many years, they've had the Wii U and the Wii, and they've had the DS and the 3DS.
Yeah.
4 consoles, 2 handheld, 2 home system, all of which have wireless capabilities.
And they haven't done
and they haven't fucking done it. It's like...
I love Nintendo.
Like the GameCube,
so
you
weird.
had to faff around with these fucking... Do you remember the link-up cables where with 4 of them, you had to like get them all to link together?
You have to push them together first, then plug
And
them
they,
in,
clicked,
yeah.
And it was like
Like
horrible.
Captain Planet rings.
It was bullshit.
Yeah.
And yet we went through it just so we could play Crystal Chronicles.
I did Final Fantasy, right? Yeah, I did that too.
And even that was a bit of a shit game because one person had to carry the bloody chalice. And that was like, you just meant
that was rubbish.
It meant that a quarter of the time you were playing that game, you weren't having fun.
Yeah.
Because you were the guy whose job it was to hold that.
Don't leave the circle.
Yeah.
But I like Four Swords because I went through it with 3 mates and me.
Yeah.
And that made it really, really fun. But it was cool because it was an offshoot. But yeah, it didn't really. It kind of fell into a pattern.
I mean, to be
after
fair,
a while.
they have actually. I say that on the 3DS, they have actually got 4 Swords. I think it was a free download. I've got it anyway,
yeah, you can do
so
it,
you can do it now. But it kind of feels like the
New stuff.
The time had passed.
Yeah.
It's like, can we have a new 4 Swords, please?
Obviously, Minish Cap as well. Minish Cap was
Minish
cool.
Cap
We chatted
was
about this the
great.
other day. Minish Cap was really, really good, but you always thought they were going to do another one. They thought, they've established it, and they didn't do it, which I never understood because Minish Cap felt like a good game. But a good game in its infancy, and a sequel would have taken it.
It was technically very impressive.
Oh, it was very nice to look
like,
at. Yeah,
it was. I remember because it was on the Game Boy Advance, and it was just gorgeous.
Yeah,
the art style. I remember it did some really clever stuff with sprites. I remember there was a boss fight against the slime, electric slime. It was the first boss fight. I like Brat nodding.
Electric slime sounds like a Zelda boss.
But I remember it getting bigger and moving around, and I remember being like. Cause it seems weird to say this now, but this was a point at which when you saw sprites doing stuff like getting larger and smaller and rotating,
it was cool.
that was like, whoa, how'd they done that?
Yeah.
Like, but it's 2-dimensional. And now, obviously,
everyone does it. But it was a good game, and I like the idea. Like the gimmick of the hat, where you could, obviously go really tiny, was cool in dungeons because it would show you dungeons from 2 different perspectives.
Yeah,
because you went in there as Big Link, and then you got Small Link, and it was everything. It was just cool. It was just something only Nintendo could really pull off.
And it had that really awesome thing of like, just when you were really small, you go into like holes in branches and stuff.
See giant mushrooms and stuff. It was cool. It was really nice.
It was a really nice touch. I was surprised they haven't like.
I thought it was really good. I thought it was really well done. But I thought if they take everything they've learned and they develop on it, it would be really good.
Because it was quite short, wasn't it?
I'm pretty sure it was. I'm pretty sure I remember being surprised by the time I finished it.
It may have been just because we were spoiled with the whole double game with Seasons and Agents.
Exactly, yeah.
But it did feel quite short.
Yeah.
Other stuff we really should mention. This is an obvious one, but quite a big one.
Oh no!
It's the Wind Waker.
Just completely passed over the way. I think that's because they re-released it.
Can you imagine if we put this out?
And without the Wind Waker, that'd been terrible. That's because they just re-released it. So I now think it's new, but it's not.
It's true.
The Wind Waker, it's just fantastic. My favourite part of the Wind Waker is still when you take your boat into the castle and you see all the Ocarina of Time references. That's still my favourite bit of that game. It talks about the hero of time and stuff. And
I was kind of annoyed because I got
fantastic.
the twist in Wind Waker spoiled for me.
Yeah.
And
that's not fair.
I know. I can't remember who did it now. I've probably blocked it from my memory because I know I'll hurt them. But so I kind of stopped playing actually because of that. I think. Because
it takes the wind out your sails. That's a bad pun. It means a bad pun, but it's good.
Also, I liked it, right? I liked the visuals of it, but I did find like it was a bloody big sea. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was.
I think the problem was I was just
sail.
getting to the point where you could like teleport around a bit, but I felt like I just got really annoyed. I was like, and everyone kept saying to me, "Yeah, but you'll get something so you can teleport around the sea soon." And I was like, "I want to do it now. I'm fed up of sailing around."
I did like the sea though because it did make it feel huge.
It was
like
beautiful.
everything. And when you used to do, it was a bit like Mario 64 because when you kind of got close to a level and you slowly saw how it, because it all went. I hate the term, but the verticality was always wasn't up. Every island went up. And I remember I loved seeing that come into view. And you're like, I'm going to have to get up there. And I love that kind of stuff. I thought that was awesome.
That was awesome. Like that's the problem is like I kind of got a bit bored sometimes of just waiting for the ocean to hurry up and give you a new
I think
island.
that's a fair criticism.
But I did love it when you found the new island, and some of them were so inventive.
Oh, they were so cool.
And actually, just the art style. I mean, like stuff like the explosions, the way the bombs exploded.
The art style makes that game. For something that was so sort of, a joke back at the time with a lot of people, you can't make it look like this. It stood up tremendously well, and it's probably its best feature, to be honest.
Did people criticise it when it?
Oh, yeah, big
you
time.
can't make a cartoon Zelda. It looks like a kid's game, but it was wonderful.
There's still like massive arguments. There's a massive split down the internet of people who think that it's the prettiest game ever, and people who think it's the ugliest.
I think it's wonderful.
I think it looks really, really good. I'm not sure I like how Link is portrayed in it from what I've seen, but the actual game looks
it's brilliant. Like it's just it doesn't do too much differently in terms of the progression. I mean, there are certainly different things that it does, and the story's quite different. But the dungeons, there are familiar elements to it. But the art style made it feel fresh and made it feel new. And the whole Postman quest was amazing. I love that Postman quest.
Yeah, the Postman quest was cool.
Yeah,
I remember starting
did it
that.
finish with a really dark ending? Probably.
That's the thing is,
It has dark moments.
I got the impression it lacked. One of the reasons I didn't like it was because it did feel a bit like seaside resort stuff to me.
I know what you mean.
It was nice and it was twee, but it lacked that darkness.
It was cool when you're on the sea and like a storm would hit, obviously predetermined storm and stuff, as you're going to a temple or something. And as you built up to the last bay, it did that a lot. And the way, good grief, I tell you what, for a game that's cartoon, when you kill Ganon, you stab that motherfucker in the head. Like, I've never seen it in any other Zelda game. You fucking stab him in the head. And I was like, that is dark. So it does have, and there's certain levels as well, which are certainly a bit off-putting.
I was under the impression that I've never finished a Zelda game, that they just trap him in the Triforce or something. And,
oh, no.
And then, I'll get you next time.
Link kills this guy.
Stabs him in the head.
Link is like Batman in Batman Returns. That guy's dead.
You get to the end of Ocarina of Time, you just go and fight Ganon and that.
Man. Oh, yeah. It's an amazing fight. That is epic.
But I think mainly, actually, my disappointment with the Wind Waker was mainly due to, I think just, it's kind of like, how you have that thing where it's like you have a favorite director or an artist or something, and they just go off the rails, and you sort of think, shit, and you kind of think, whoa, man, you've gone mad.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, you sort of think, where are you going with this? And for me, that's what like Majora's Mask was all about.
I see what you mean. So
I wonder what the team splits were like, because it really felt because Majora's Mask came out like 2 years after.
Yeah.
They must have been working on it. Either they just had, I don't know. It's like either the whole Ocarina team went straight onto that.
Yeah.
And just went a bit mad because maybe they just almost burnt out from doing Ocarina and just went crazy with ideas.
Yeah.
But it kind of felt like, I don't know, that team it felt different. It felt like a really different direction.
I know what you mean.
And actually, I think it's just an interesting thing to end on, actually, just because I think it's possibly one of the most memorable things in any Zelda game, in my mind, and you might disagree, was the whole thing of the fetch quest stuff with the masks.
Yeah.
And the fact that to complete Majora's Mask, there was two endings, basically. And there was one end. Well, no, I'm sure if there was a different ending. You could get the hero's mask.
Yeah.
And if you got this special mask, then you had to get all the masks in the game to get it, which was a lot of work.
Oh, yeah, it's hard.
But then if you got it, you got the hero's mask, and the last boss was really easy.
Yeah, that's right.
Like stupidly easy, because it meant you got this sort of true ending where you become almost like, you're fighting against this really hard boss, but you become like a superhero pretty much, and you just destroy it. And it was really weird art style. The whole thing was odd. But anyway, one of the masks that was the hardest one to get was the lover's mask.
Yep.
And the lover's mask took such a long time because basically you had to do these fetch quests and you had to do this chain of things within the 3 days. And some bits you got stuck on because you needed new items or you needed and you could only do it right at the end of the game, basically.
Yeah.
But it was really sad because it was like you invested so much time into getting everything right so that these two
and then
lovers,
when the next time round it starts again.
Yeah, but it's the fact that you keep doing it and you keep having to restart again and again and again. And there's something really poignant because it's a bit like in Shadow of the Colossus where it gives you the time to think and the space to think. There's something really poignant about the effort you were going to reunite these lovers.
Yeah.
Because they had personal problems and you were going out your way to basically almost be like a little elf making their life better so that they could, fall in love and be together. And there was something really poignant about the fact that every time you do that, they'd get this, because you'd have to finish it about a minute. The only way you could do it is you finish it a minute before the moon arrives.
Yeah.
So it's like this Romeo and Juliet thing of like...
It's lovely.
If you get everything right, then they just get that split second together before the world ends. And to do that, you required so much work and so much... And I think that element of like... I think sometimes people just look at Zelda and go, oh yeah, bombs and hook shots and bows and arrows. That's an element of it. But I think it's the little mini stories like that within the games that really make them.
Oh, yeah. I've always said that. Any kind of game is the little moments that make them stand out. And I think, for me, definitely Zelda does that better than any game, be it quips to other games, be it the way it acknowledges other games or anything like that. It's just, again, it makes you feel like you're part of a special club and you're the only one. You're not. There's millions of other people, but it makes it feel like that.
Well,
That's a hard thing to pull off.
Well, we are still all part of a special club.
We are. I can't believe I'm 29 years old and they've just released a Zelda game, which I think could be in my top, maybe 5, maybe 10 games ever. I mean,
I'm
that's,
excited.
that is testament where testament is due in Nintendo.
I am incredibly
I've made a wonderful game.
excited. When the PlayStation 4 comes out, I will be sitting on my 3DS going, fuck off next gen.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Honestly, this is exactly what I wanted from a handheld Zelda.
Anyway,
Could not be happier.
long may the club continue. And thank you for joining us and being part of our little club.
Indeed.
This week. This was obviously a one-off podcast. If you're listening to this on YouTube, or then you bear in mind that obviously we do a weekly games podcast about all sorts of games.
That's right. We talk about everything.
If you're not familiar with that, you can subscribe to that. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, listening, whatever you're doing.
Whatever. You can watch us somehow, I'm sure.
It will have been a
It's been a
static
joy.
screen if you were watching it.
And finally, if you haven't done so already, of course, we do have you go to VideoGamer.com. We are obviously a full gamers website.
We got the review in the accompanying feature. I'm going to tell you right now, the accompanying feature is long.
Okay, so yeah. So we've got our usual Video Gamer brand, a very short, sharp review to just give you a quick gist of it, and then a massive
honestly,
feature.
Then Simon's allowed to write about
Anyone
Zelda.
that ever says, we don't write enough, bollocks. We write too much. Fact.
Well, I look forward to going and reading that now. Anyway, thanks so much for joining us, guys.
Cheers.
Goodbye.